Welcome to Office Hours, where we answer your media and tech-related production questions every single day. Cindy Drozda from Erie, Colorado is our reader today. Cindy, what have we got?
Our first question is from Travis Morrison in Perth. Is it possible to stream from a Raspberry Pi? Scenario is cam op running with Trail Runner. Camera is Osmo Pocket or Action Cam. USB into Pi paired with 4G hotspot. Need to send SRT to vMix in the cloud. Possible, or am I dreaming?
And Guy Cochran has some suggestions for you. Guy?
Yeah, it's certainly possible. During NAB, our friend Omar here that came on the panel showed in extra hours a little BellaBox is the name of the software solution where he put together a couple hotspots and was doing just that. The thing to note is that with H.265, you can get a more efficient way of transporting SRT. So H.264 is going to be a little bit bigger. And so the trick on these is not using an older model. And with the Pocket in particular, we had a Tesla gig with Noah Sargent where when that camera first came out, we had to use a little converter like this to convert the USB-C to webcam. Or basically it comes out as webcam and we had to convert it using this to HDMI. So there is not a native HDMI out of the Pocket. So you're going to have to get some kind of adapter or there is a way of RTMP streaming out of that Pocket and then converting that to HDMI in some way and then to SRT. So the thing with SRT is in the cloud, you'll want some way of receiving it, and vMix can do it natively, but really you want some kind of protection in front. So I like to use another instance, either Haivision, SRT Gateway. I rent SRT Mini server, and that SRT Mini server allows you to time align things. And with running, it probably doesn't matter. Jeff Keithley would be a good guy to talk to about this. He did one recently like this where they used live view. So that's the thing. How big of a deal is if these signals drop? So the way that Jeff does it is he uses multiple live views, and those have multiple modems inside, and that way it's all rugged and the battery's solved and the time alignment solved. So there's a lot of things that you can do with the live views that you can't do with these kind of cobbled together solutions, especially for redundancy. You could use Speedify or something like that if you're using a phone. So Larix Broadcaster would be another way of doing this if you didn't want to go with the Pocket, but I do like the 1-inch sensor on the Pocket. So you're not dreaming. Other people are doing it. It's just one of those things where test. If you can run the route and see how there's apps where you can get the cell phone tower locations, and you can just run the route and see where they're located and start to make some decisions from there.
Travis, thanks for the question. Guy, thanks for the answer. And it's time to go to our next question.
This one comes to us through the QR code. Mike Wilson in Phoenix, Arizona is asking, is it possible to preview and manage Canon RAW video files in macOS without loading them into a nonlinear editor? Canon tools lack full file management, move, copy, delete. Davinci Resolve Storage Manager has some capability but requires many keystrokes and clicks.
And Jason Bache is going to help you out this morning. Jason?
If there's a way to do it, I'm unaware. I always do a pre-ingest roll, and that is regardless of how I'm shooting. But yeah, Canon's RAW is particularly annoying.
And Alex is going to add in. Alex?
Yeah, I don't think that they're off-the-shelf software. I think every time I've used Canon footage, I'm always bringing it into Resolve directly. So I haven't looked at any other way to do it. And I will admit that I have the dual, I have an R5C that I use with a dual lens, but that's the only Canon I've used in a long time. So.
Yeah, my experience has been when I've done a lot of Canon ingest off of my old 5D Mark II and things like that over the years, they were always a little bit laggy in getting their translator software out into the world. It wouldn't be surprised to me that Apple would do an OS change and suddenly the import of Canon would be problematic for maybe 30 days, 60 days, and then suddenly they'd revise their import software and everything would get back to normal. So make sure you have the latest everything if you're going to be working with it. Next question.
From the QR code again, Raina Doppelpopoulos in Situate is asking, looking for Windows software similar to Loopback on Macs that can internally route audio from different programs to different outputs. Want to monitor splashtop in headphones and send presentation audio to sound system, but Dante or Mac not an option.
And Nigel Dessau is going to help you. Nigel?
It's really hard to find anything as good as Loopback. I know there's some fruit-based ones that people use. The other one I've started to use, which does not have all the same capabilities, Motive Mix from Shure. You don't need to have a Shure mic to use it. Has some of the capabilities, but the more complicated you make this, the more Loopback tends to stand out.
Next question.
Paul Valhus in Austin, Texas asks, these mics are handmade in Portland, Oregon, and are used by some major musicians. What do you make of them? Link provided.
And it says eartrumpetlabs.com. I see down there. Alex, what do you think?
I mean, how can you not use a mic named Myrtle? I mean, it's just, Myrtle.
I can see someone yelling
Louise.
from stage, "Bring me Myrtle!"
I need Edwina out here.
That's right. Stat.
I've never seen these mics in the wild, so I don't have a strong answer. Maybe some people are using them. They look like they look great on TikTok.
Probably be a good novel thread, a story about how they got them all named, but we're not going there. Next question.
Gabriela Eshsesau-Mistira in Sault Ste. Marie comes to us through the QR code. Is anyone using Substack? What do people think? Is Substack streaming a real thing now?
Nigel's going to dive into this. Nigel?
So there are two different parts of that question. Does anybody use Substack? I use Substack. I post a Substack every week. I follow lots of people on Substack. I even subscribe, and people subscribe to me as well. So I found Substack a very good source of information and learning. It tends to be written-wise, text-wise, more long form. It's not short like Twitter, but it's some great stuff on Substack and lots of people I like. The Substack video streaming stuff, to be honest with you, I'm circling that at the moment. I'm trying to make it work. I've just started learning about it. I think the thing about streaming, as we know, is committing to a regular schedule is pretty important for live streaming, and I can't quite get my brain around that, but it is one of the things I want to do in the next month or so is learn to see if I can get that going.
Alex?
We're moving Michael Krasny's show to Substack over the next couple months, and so we're doing some research on it right now and kind of figuring those things out. I think that one of the things that's really interesting about Substack is kind of the cross-promotional opportunities. So as you join, you start to see other people that have joined, and it's just that there's a little bit less of a vacuum there. If you are an interview show like ours and you interview people that happen to have a Substack account, there's a lot of cross-pollination between those two things. And so we think that there's going to be some advantages to it. There's a lot of community tools that look pretty interesting. The streaming, we're testing the streaming right now. Kind of feels like they made it up, in the lab. They didn't really hire anybody that had actually done streaming before. And they just looked at other things and don't really know what's important and what's not. So there's a lot of things that are missing right now. Hopefully they'll add them over time. Obviously, we're giving them some feedback on it. And but there's, so I would say that it's okay for what it is. It does produce video on a web page, but there's no start cycle. There's like just lots of little things that make live more fun to do that are missing right now. So hopefully they'll add those things and it'll get better.
I just had the experience on David Paskin's show last Thursday of discussing a Substack article. It was one of the most interesting articles we've read in a long time, and we had a great time talking about it. So it is increasingly on my radar, and I would consider it to be a solid source of interest and information, as Alex said. I've been surprised at how long things are, because the world seems to be getting shorter and shorter, and this reminds me of the old days of like Harper's Magazine, where you'd start an article and 3 hours later, you were still reading and thinking about it. So it's an interesting platform. Next question.
Here's one from Pedro G. Gonzalez III in Washington, D.C. 4K 30p live streaming to YouTube. How much better is the Magewell Ultra Encode versus Zowiebox? My cats deserve the best.
Well, certainly. We would never say otherwise. Alex Lindsay?
I've used. I don't have a lot of experience with the Zowiebox. Looking at it, I would if someone said, "Okay, you have to pick one of these without using either one of them," I'd probably go with a Magewell because I've had a lot of experience with the Magewells in the past. These are, when you say your cats deserve the best, I mean these are prosumer encoders. Like maybe Zowiebox might be in the consumer encoder. So these are not. It gets a lot bigger pretty quickly after these. So, I mean, they're fine, but usually you're missing a lot of little bells and whistles that you would have in larger encoders.
Every cat I've known has been a consumer, not even a prosumer. Anyway, Guy Cochran. Whoops, you're muted.
Sorry, I was on a different web page trying to show you guys the Zowiebox interface. So right now, my Zowiebox is actually kind of freaking out. You can see it across the top. It's saying the mainstream of this web page does not support H.265, and I'm trying to actually click to get to the settings. So here's a reason why when you go cheap and you're trying to do a stream and you're under duress and you're like, hey, I need to hit that settings button that's hidden underneath there, and I can't quite get to it because it's freaking out. So little things like that are why you don't want to use cheap stuff in production. I mean, your cats deserve the best, so I'd probably go with the Magewell over the Zowiebox. I mean, they're cool for testing. They do NDI really well if you're just using them for an input and an output. So this is an encoder and a decoder, which is pretty cool. The Magewell is just a more solid unit, and the interface is rock solid. So I'd recommend the Magewell over one of those, or better yet, get an Osprey Talon. Those are really super solid. They are about 3 times the money, though.
Yeah, spend some money. If not, your Siamese will look at you with weird look in the eye. Go ahead, Alex.
What I will say is at 4K 30, I probably would lean against the Osprey Talon, like from our experience with office hours. So I probably wouldn't go down that path.
A lot of collected wisdom here, always worth paying attention to. And by the way, we're taking your questions as always. That's what drives this show. You can ask questions, chat about them, vote on them in Mukana. That's our Q&A system. So go to officehours.global/join. We'll send you an email within a day or two. And once you've done that, you can ask, vote on, discuss the show's questions. It's a really nice community. In fact, we'll probably be dipping into it for some of the commentary that goes on there live during the show every day. Next question.
Poonsak Dorji asked the panel, "Hi, I am helping a friend photograph characters made out of stones collected from riverbanks for her book, similar to this book, Stepping Stones, A Refugee Family's Journey. Please advise the things I would need for such a project. I have a Sony DSLR."
First of all, that sounds like a lovely project. Ronny Hafsoy from Tromsø, Norway will give you some help here.
Yeah, we had some experience doing product photographing, and what you are probably most concerned about is probably not the camera. I guess the camera and your lenses would be a good choice. What you would be struggling with is to have kind of a calm separation for the background, because I think the stones are just going to lay down on some kind of background. And since the stones are so close to the background, you will probably have some problem with the shadowing. So I would suggest that you might look into using a light box. I guess these stone figures are kind of small, so it wouldn't be too much of a hassle to rig this inside a light box and have good control over all the light sources coming from each direction, so that you can also maybe in the opening add kind of a speckle light if the stones are wet. If they are dry, they will probably reflect more or less of the light, and having, of course, a solid tripod so that you can photograph this securely from above, and then, of course, easily have access to adjust all these figurines or figures. But shadows is, as I can see it, one of the big problems here. So make sure you have a good and wide light source spread all around that you also can control, so that you can create the scene that you actually are looking for.
Alex Lindsay.
Yeah, it would help us to know exactly what the scale of this is. Are they 4 feet high? Are they 2 inches high? It would change dramatically. Also, are you trying to shoot them in the environment that they're in, or are you trying to bring them into a studio? So let us know what those things look like, because that vastly changes it. A lot of times if you're shooting in the environment with, let's say, larger stones, then you would be talking about really a lot of things to kind of fill light. So reflectors, diffusers, that kind of thing, to kind of soften things up and give you a more rounded view. Once you go into a studio, then you're talking about all kinds of backgrounds and so on and so forth. So let us know what the scale is and whether you're shooting in a studio or whether you're shooting in the environment itself.
All good advice. The only thing I'd suggest is that I've learned over the course of my photography career that if I start with backlight for my subjects to separate them and make sure that each figure is distinct, and I'm coming mostly from portrait photography and things like that, I start with the backlight and then I fill in from the front to get it to the right level, and that's always served me well. But have a great time with this project. Sounds really interesting. Next question.
From Tony Mobley in Noonan, I have the iKan teleprompter 12-inch iPhone 13 Pro Max as camera. Can't control iPhone holder. I need to replace the holder or a new camera. What do you suggest?
Alex Lindsay is going to start us off here. Alex?
I don't know what you're trying to do to control the holder. So I don't quite understand the question. It said you can't control the iPhone holder. And is that because it's not locking, or you're trying to move it, or I don't? I think the problem that I have with the question is that I just don't understand what you're trying to do.
Yeah, Nigel, do you want to dive in?
Yeah, I had the same question, but I would tell you that there comes at some point where I've tried lots of different iPhone prompter things, and at some point that each has major limitations. I appreciate this is a bit more expensive, but I would really, if you're a Mac user, I know it works, encourage you to look at the Elgato prompter. It's really a very practical solution. I think there's an iPhone adapter for the back of it. If not, I know people have got Link 360s in it. Jason's putting his thumbs up to that. I know you can use their camera, and you can use a DSLR or some type of camera like that. It's what I use every day. It's very easy. It works great in Zoom calls as another screen. It works great as a teleprompter. And I think at the end of the day, every other solution I've tried on an iPhone or an iPad, I've ended up just becoming frustrated and not being able to do what we do every day, which is use it for looking at everybody's happy faces on Zoom.
I'm going to give you one more suggestion, which is I went looking for my teleprompter rig for a small adjustable thing for the camera that's behind it, and it was very hard. I went on a search through geared heads, because if you've never worked with a geared head before, the bigger ones are for major photography where you have a pretty heavy camera, but it allows you to precision change all the axes. You can tilt, you can go side to side, and certainly pan, tilt, and skew the camera are all possible, and they give you fine control over that. I found a reasonably small one, and I wish I had I was trying to find it so I could show it to you. But small geared heads under something like a phone mount behind a teleprompter are a joy, because you know where to reach and you can make very small adjustments. And for something like a camera that's shooting towards someone, sometimes a degree or two makes all the difference in being able to raise, lower, and adjust that shot. So do a search on geared heads, or small, tiny geared heads maybe, and see what you can find that you might be able to position under that. Next question.
Paul Valhus in Austin, Texas asks, Davinci Resolve 20 has a keyframe editor, voiceover recording, Blackmagic cloud folders, deep imaging compositing, AI Intelliscript, AI Magic Mask 2, AI Audio Assist, and Dialog Matcher. Discuss these, and does that bring it up to the level of other major editors?
Jason Beisch.
Yes, not only does it, but it did long before anything on that list existed. I personally use Final Cut and have for quite a while because I'm just so fast. It's like muscle memory. But yes, it is absolutely 100% a very viable pipeline.
Alex Lindsay.
Yeah, almost all the things you listed there are not things that are necessary for most editing. So there are a lot of shiny features, and people are using them more and more. But the vast majority of what you see on TV is edited by software that doesn't do any of those things, or almost any of those things, maybe keyframing. So I think that they're adding a lot of great features, and it is already a very powerful editing tool, as well as a color tool, as well as a lot of other things. And there's a little bit of a jack of all trades, ace of nothing that they have at the moment, but they have so many engineers working on it. A lot of these kind of are coming together over time. So I think that it's hard to ignore the speed and depth of which Blackmagic is applying to Resolve. But I think that the things that you're listing there are they're great, but they're not the day-to-day editing tools that most high-end editors use.
I'll never forget early in my career when a serious cinematographer who was really good looked at me and said, "Why would you ever use a dissolve?" And what he was saying essentially is what Alex was reflecting there. For most of the movies you've ever watched in a theater, the only transition anybody ever uses is a cut. And they're very, very, very precise about how they place their cuts. You can do all the storytelling you need with the basic tools, but I understand it's fun to have these tools, and sometimes in the look of things that you want, more is better. So if this is the way you want to edit, go for it. Next question.
Next up is David Brady in New York City, New York, USA. Using the ATEM Extreme ISO as my encoder, is it possible to construct a custom profile with specific settings such as keyframe interval, audio sample rate, etc.?
Guy Cochran's going to help you out here. Guy?
Yeah, inside of the macOS library application support, Blackmagic Design /switchers is an XML file, and you can go in and you can tweak that XML file. It looks something like this once you open it up, and something like, anything that'll open up an XML file. And in here, you can see the resolution and the bit rate, and then there is the ability to change the keyframe interval here. So I would recommend a different encoder, but if you insist on using that one and you have a nice solid internet connection where the cache and the buffer isn't going to get full, it doesn't matter, it's not a do or die stream, then more power to you. Go adjust that XML file.
Hey, don't forget we are continually adding new shows into the Office Hours lineup. Extra Hours takes place on Monday for those around the world for whom the main show timing might fit exactly. That happens at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, so you can translate that to yours. On Tuesday, we're doing special shows occasionally now, so keep your eyes on that. Wednesdays, we have Conversations with Tony Mobley, which is the longest-running show on Office Hours. Tony has spoken to literally hundreds and hundreds of people, and it's always a great show to watch. Thursday, The Rundown. David Paskin hosts a panel that takes a deep dive into the why behind technology. So those are just some of the things you can find every week here on Office Hours. Let's go to our next question.
Douglas Carmichael looks for advice. Would the BMD Streaming Encoder replace the web presenter?
Jason Bache, what do you think?
Yes, Douglas, that is exactly what it is. It is actually just a name change, and that came out as part of the NAB announcement to eliminate confusion because they were introducing the streaming decoder. They wanted to make very clear that that the web presenter was their encoder, half of that.
Alex?
Yeah. I mean, I think it replaces what they've made. I don't know a lot of people who are, using these as core, encoding tools. Although I am very interested in the decoder. So being able to have something that's coming out of the cloud and can be converted back to HDMI or STI is interesting. It just depends on what the quality is when it comes out. So we still have to test it.
Next question.
Roscoe Jones in Madison, Indiana asks, is Napster back again to disrupt the music world? A virtual experience company, Infinite Reality, bought out Napster for $200 million.
Alex, what do you think? Have you looked into this?
Yeah, so I have a Napster T-shirt. I had I like one of the original T-shirts, and I thought it'd be cool. My daughter likes to get shirts with logos that are from the music stuff, and I've got lots of concert shirts and everything else. And I said, "Hey, would you like this shirt?" And she said, "What's Napster?" So I just want to point out that when people are spending a bunch of money on a brand, which is essentially what they're doing, there's not any technology that they would need right now. I don't know if that brand has lasted. In our generation it has, but in my kids' generation, they don't know what Napster is. And I think that's the problem.
I guess she hasn't seen The Social Network, which may or may not be there. Anyway, next question.
This one's from the QR code. Chuck Hodges in Tuolumne, California. Question for Zoom. Will there be a return to PC for ZoomOSC since it's mostly just a command translator for the API? Or are Liminal products really just for macOS now and leaving the larger PC customer base behind?
Alex, what do you think?
Yeah, I think next time we get Zoom on, we'll ask them directly. But I believe most of those commands are still available in their higher density Pro AV tools and everything else. So ZoomOSC is a collection of APIs that Zoom makes available to anyone. So what they're developing versus what is available, those commands are available on a Mac and a PC. It's just that's what they have developed and what they spend time on. There's a limited amount of things, and they're making those decisions based on the best platform or the amount of time that they have and resources they have to do those things. But those things are available. Those commands and those calls are available on a wider platforms.
Next question.
Douglas Carmichael's asking, has anyone worked with non-Western streaming platforms like Soup from Korea, formerly Africa TV?
I have never even heard of them. So Alex may be familiar. He's very hooked into that world. Alex, have you heard of Soup?
All I can say is that no one does anything in Korea anymore, except for YouTube, because they can afford to. They put some taxes on streaming, and it's pretty brutal. And so it is. So Korea has been kind of I don't know about North Korea. I bet you there's no cost to streaming to North Korea, but there's no, like North Korea is probably like, hey, would you like to stream to the 8 people who have, but to South Korea, they've done a lot of, weird control stuff that has made it difficult for folks to operate. I believe that a couple of the streaming companies have actually pulled out of Korea because of it. South Korea.
Yeah. Interesting. Next question.
This one is from Roscoe Jones in Madison, Indiana. Broadcasters have complained that Google has taken away their advertisers, but can the courts make the audiences return?
Nigel is going to opine on this. Nigel, what do you think?
No.
There you go.
Wanted more than that. I mean, the reality is Google hasn't helped. But this is a self-inflicted wound as well as a march of technology. And also, I have to tell you, I sort of gloss over these court case things because they're until this gets to the Supreme Court and somebody decides it, then this is just backwards and forwards. And we all get tempted by the clickbait of this court, that court. These are very long-running discussions. But the reality is there's an old English story about a king called King Canute, who tried to convince his followers that he wasn't divine. So he put his chair into the sea or just on the beach and tried to command the waves not to lap over his feet. I feel this is a Canute-like exercise.
Alex Lindsay.
Yeah, as always, these are usually much more complicated negotiation tactics. They're trying to buy time. The problem really is that YouTube is expanding very quickly. And when they say that, there's some quotes here where they say that it's not, the Google advertising is not good for creators. What they mean is large corporations making content, not creators, because there's never been a better opportunity to be a creator than there is now. It doesn't mean that it's not a lot of work. I was talking to somebody who was, going to put together a new channel, and they're going to start spending some real money and doing high quality. And I was like, you got to understand that most of the folks that are popular on YouTube started when they were teenagers or early 20s, and they had tons of time, and they just were able to just burn up the atmosphere, like just hundreds of videos that no one watched, and slowly found their voice of what that looks like. So the level of meritocracy is pretty brutal on these creator platforms, but you can do it from any part of the world in any background. I mean, that's the thing that's very wide open at the moment. You just have to be willing to put the time in to make that happen. I think that the challenge that they have is that advertising, is really hard to make work, and they don't have the kind of data that Google has. I can tell you, being in meetings with some of the folks that deal with Google advertising and Facebook advertising and so on and so forth, a lot of times what they talk about is a multiplier, and they'll say, well, what's your multiplier? And so everyone knows what that number is. It's like, oh, it's 6.2 or 3.8. And they're like, 3.8, oh, that's really low. We'll bring that up. That's the amount of money that they get out of putting $1 in. So when they say I put $1 in, I get $3.8 out, and that's considered kind of low. That's why, because once you dial this in and you figure out your market, there's a lot of money there to make, and that's why everyone keeps flocking. That's why these are many $1 trillion companies, is because they're really good at the ROI.
Next question.
This one is from Paul Valhus in Austin, Texas. Can Batch harness machine learning processes and pre-process mats for every person in an entire film or television series in mere hours, as it claims?
Interesting. Jason Bache is going to help you out here. Jason?
I'm sure it can. And the real question that you should be asking is, will it create mats that anybody wants to see? And I can't speak to that.
Alex Lindsay is our resident mat expert. What do you think?
We haven't used it, so I don't know yet. But I can tell you that mats are 100%, or 0%. But there's not a lot of in between, and it's really hard to do what they're talking about. So for pre-production, which is something that they promote, and to hack things together, and potentially for some stuff that's online, maybe. But when you really start talking, when you're talking about building mats, oftentimes there's heavy motion blur, there's lots of complicated parts, and haven't seen anything. There's definitely things that make it easier for tracking and so on and so forth. But what happens is when you hand it to an auto tool, you no longer have any way to fix it if it's not right. So you just have to keep running it. It's kind of, and that's the big challenge.
If you have questions that you want to put into the show during the course of the show run, don't forget about askofficehours.global. You can just type that into your web browser or use the QR code that I just popped up on the screen for you. That's askofficehours.global. If you're watching the show, you can simply use that QR code even if you're driving along or something like that. Well, you wouldn't be doing it while you're driving, I guess. But just make sure that you type in askofficehours.global, and you can get a question into the queue really quickly that way. Next question.
John Foltz in Selinsgrove, Pennsylvania, U.S. asks the panel, where do you prefer to sell used equipment, eBay?
And Nigel's going to help us out. Nigel, what do you do?
I think it depends on the real value and the complexity of this equipment. I think if the equipment really has some sustainable value in terms of tens or even hundreds of dollars, I will use eBay. If the equipment is sort of general purpose but not much value, I will give it to Goodwill and wonder if somebody can find a way to make use of it. I don't have a connection with a local school, and I think schools and colleges tend to want, in my opinion, slightly more up-to-date technology. But sadly, by the time I get to get rid of it, I'm just often throwing it away.
Yeah. Cindy Drozda, your thoughts?
Well, I buy a lot of used gear on eBay, not necessarily old and obsolete, but there are deals on eBay if you're willing to go with somebody else's problems.
Ronnie Hofsoy, Tromsø.
Yeah, and just to add to that, of course, eBay is used widely around the world. And in Scandinavia, we have a new contender that is called Octopus, that is actually tending to be for the professional stage, live audio, etc., with everything from lights to cases and trusses, etc. So these are not available around the globe, but I know they are thinking about expanding into new areas. So just if you are in United States, just send them an email and ask when they are coming to United States. This is a really cool service.
Next question.
Robert Green in Los Angeles asked the panel, fun hearing about the new higher capacity solid-state drives at NAB. What SSD do you recommend for sustained data flow for editing in an affordable price range?
Guy Cochran's going to start us off. Guy?
Oh, you threw me off at the end there with that affordable price range thing. I had this all queued up, ready to, hit it out of the park because I was going to show you what we put in one of the Fortune 10s last week. I'm using a G-Tech 8-bay, and Sydney had asked a question earlier, and I still like these spinning drives, but they're now bought by Western Digital. They look like this. This is the G-Raid Shuttle 4. This is a 24 terabytes, so that's 4 bays, and you can go up to, you can see in that form factor, 104 terabytes. What I was excited about at NAB that we were also talking about before the show is 122 terabytes in one SSD was shown at NAB. That's just insanity. That's not gigabytes, that's terabytes. So you can imagine in a 24 bay server rack how many you're getting over a petabyte now. So this is like Mr. Beast level stuff, but this was shown, and look at that data rate speed, 14,600 megabytes sequential read. That's just insanity. So Phison's the name of the company, Phison, for those of you that are listening. These are real. They were shown at the show, and the GB Labs guy that I was helping install this big Ray was excited about this because it's going to allow them to pack more in. And when you think about some of the jobs I used to have where they were putting in all this cooling and additional electricity, these higher capacity drives are going to alleviate a ton of that, because now data centers can be a smaller physical footprint. The racks can be much smaller. So technology is just advancing so fast.
Just think, no matter how many high-def cat videos you've collected, you will never run out of room. Jason?
Depends on how many cats you have, I suppose.
Yeah, good point.
So for me, this is one and done when it comes to OWC. I love their SSDs. I believe they came out with the first one that is completely Thunderbolt compliant, Thunderbolt 5 that is, and can actually make full use of the 6,000 megabytes per second symmetrical connection that your M4 Mac Mini may or may not have. It's really hard to do external NLE affordably, and I think OWC is going to be your best bet there.
Alex?
Yeah, it depends on the speed that you need. I think that I'm going to agree with Jason. I have a couple of these. These are the Express from a cost perspective. These are the Express for, what do they call these? 4 M2s. They have 4 NVMEs in them, and this can get up to about 34 terabytes, I think. Or 32 terabytes, I think, I believe, depending on the size of it. And they're pretty darn fast. They're not quite as fast as I need for multicam at 6K, so 6K RAW from the cameras. And so those ones we are looking at some of the Thunderbolt 5 to what Jason's talking about of 6 gigs a second. These are the new Thunderblade X12s. But I don't think that there's any single one that I would probably. The single SSDs when we're capturing Angelbird are really good. You can use a lot of them as long as you only use the first half. What you pay for is the second half of the SSDs if you're capturing on a camera. So anyway, those are the things that I would kind of consider. But these little M4 2s or whatever these little enclosures from OWC, a lot of us use them, and they're great on site, and they work well.
Guy, you had a follow-up.
Yeah, one more quick one, just in case for those that are listening and driving. I would take a look at the iodines. Those are another world of Thunderbolt NVMe SSD drives that have amazing speeds. These, I believe there's 8 in there, but they're coming out with a new Pro Mini.
I think that those are loop-throughs. Those are 4 loop-throughs on the iodines. So basically, you plug them. You take up all of your, like if you have a Mac Studio with those iodines, you plug 4 of them in to all your Thunderbolts on your computer, and then that's a loop through on each one of them. So you don't lose your you don't lose them if you want to attach cameras or other things to them. But then they suck up the entire connection there, and you will get the same kind of speeds that I was talking about. Incredibly fast solution. Yeah.
Hopefully, Robert, that helped you understand all of this. Next question.
Poonsak Dorji is back. Following up on my earlier question, the stones are painted and between 3 and 6 inches tall, and we will be shooting indoors. Thanks.
Okay, some live back and forth. Ronnie Hofsoy, do you want to dive back into this?
Yeah, as I foresaw, we've had some good luck using products from something called Orange Monkey. I think it's South Korea. Going back to South Korea. And one of the cool new ones, which is called Foldio 3, and just to mention, there are numerous of different products in this range. This one is kind of cool because you can just...
Ronnie, are you sharing something? Because I don't think we're seeing it.
Oh, sorry.
That's all right. I just wanted to make sure. There we go.
So this is the Foldio 3, which can be put on its back. And the cool thing about this, it has integrated LED lights. So you don't have to rig anything. And you can control these lights pretty detailed, and you can use it for any type of product shot. So, and this can also, of course, be filled with a different background, so you can have different type of backgrounds laying inside it. It's easily connected to your power outlet through a small USB fed power, and you're off to the races.
Alex?
Yeah, so I think that if you're going to bring them in, one of the things to think about is, do you want them to be a plain white background, or do you want to have something feel like the environment that it's in? So think about like dark key, white key, light key. One of the things to look at is, so those are kind of, sometimes you want infinite white, and in those cases, there's some great little product sites. They're basically a corner of curved wall, with curved corners, that you can, if you light it up, you can just put an object in there and it's going to be infinite white and show that there. And that for products, that might be what you want, or you might want to build an environment that's going to be around it. And so those are the things to think about as you start to get into that smaller area. You might want to have it like kind of high up with some distance to the background so that you can drop that out of focus. And then, but most of the time, you're going to want some kind of really large source. So the big light sources for pulling out all the detail is going to be something that's almost a given.
Ronnie, you wanted to come back in?
Yeah, as Alex suggested, it's a good idea to have something distancing the figurines up from the background. So use either clay or something that you can shape and make them a little further away from the background. Don't put them directly on the background, and having them further from the background increases the chance of reducing all the difficult shadows, etc., that you sometimes are getting when you are just putting it flat on the background. So good ideas from everyone.
Alex, you wanted to follow up?
Yeah, this is the kind of thing I was talking about with this little My Studio. You can see this little white cyc here with curved edges, so you kind of can set your products there for kind of an infinite white. And those get as big as a room. You just got to decide how. That's the smallest one that I've seen, but you keep on buying bigger ones depending on the scale of what you want to do.
Next question.
Here's one from J.J. McKenna in Scavo, California. NAB had some pretty great new innovations for immediate external storage expansion of the current iPhone models. Does the panel have a similar recommendation for the older iPhone 13 line?
Jason Bache is going to help you out here. Jason?
Yes, similar, assuming you've got a little bit of patience. That is a standard Lightning port, and the nice thing about the iPhone 13 is that you can use the Files app, which is just integrated natively into iOS. So with a little bit of patience and the Lightning to SD card reader, it's the fastest possible way, I think, that you can get anything into and out of an iPhone 13, barring the cloud or Wi-Fi.
Alex?
Yeah, the big change was at 15. So at the 15, when they went to USB-C, things get really quick. So it's 15, 16, 7, what will be the 17. But once they moved to USB-C, the external storage changed dramatically. I think before that, you're going to find it to be pretty painful.
Next question.
Rajan Shandil in Los Angeles asks the panel, any post-production assistant editor AI tools that the panel has used that help sort, label, and organize footage and take away some of the pain at the start of editing?
Alex, thoughts?
Michael Cioni, keep tracking what he's working on. Strata is what he's been putting together, and that is planning to do exactly what you're talking about. But I think that it's a long, drawn-out process. It's complicated, but it looks like he's probably in the lead position in that area right now.
Yeah, I'd say the same thing. I'm really keeping my eye on Strata for complex workflows because I think Michael's really smart and he understands this process as well as anybody. So he's taking some time to do it. So I suspect he's looking at doing something in the cloud that's going to be very powerful. Next question.
Rian Smith in Trinidad, West Indies is asking, interesting clip about a Steadicam video rig setup that they put together for a shot with a Facebook link.
And I don't know if anybody's followed this link to see this particular video rig. Has nobody's gone down the rabbit hole yet. Alex famously has a close relative, his brother, who's a Steadicam high-end operator. And so the next time you see him coming on the shore, something like that, it might be wise to think about that. But, everybody knows the basic ideas since Garrett kind of patented the Steadicam rig in the beginning, and it's become such a huge industry now with all of the gimbals and things like that it's a different world than it was back in the early days. And I'm constantly surprised and delighted by how much utility we're getting out of the smaller gimbal type rigs that are now doing what the big Steadicam rigs used to do. That said, if you've got a heavy camera and you need professional operators and gear, nothing's ever going to change. That I think it's, probably 40% the gear and 60% the human being who's operating it, because that's always going to make the difference. Alex, your thoughts?
It's hard to tell from looking at the video, and the name of the channel is something we're not going to show on the show. So the on Facebook, and it's hard to watch Facebook videos because you can't scroll through them. Anyway, so but the it looks like the rig was it's the kind of rig that you build when you don't have a Trinity head. Trinity would do what they're trying to do here. The other option for some of this stuff would have been either a Trinity or a Ronin 40 would have given them kind of this off-angle ability to get into places that they wouldn't normally be able to get into. So they kind of hack something together. But it's a Steadicam with some weights and an offset and a gimbal on the end. And again, those are the kind of things you would do with a Trinity, but it's really expensive.
Next question.
Pedro G. Gonzalez III is back with us from Washington, D.C. For 4K video, what encoders would you recommend? Less than 1,000, less than 2,000, and less than 3,000 options.
Guy's going to start us out, then Alex. Guy?
Yeah, I like the Epiphan Pearl Nano because we could cloud control. It's got XLR inputs, so we can shift inputs if we need to. There's a lot of configuration that we could do when we ship these things out, and somebody at the last minute needs to make a change, and there's nobody boots on the ground that's nearby the device. It's nice to be able to cloud control these things. Same with Magewell, but you do have to pay a monthly on the Magewell to get into their cloud ecosystem. Depends on what kind of 4K video too. Is it HDR? You might want to look at the Prism if you're going the Teradek Prism if you're going over 3,000. There's also some higher end stuff. Maybe Alex can allude to some of that stuff, but I think you're under 1,000. You're in the Magewell encoder. So those are the ones I'd recommend.
Alex?
Yeah. I think the Prism's probably the first entry level one that I'd start to think about. It's over $3,000. There's nothing under $3,000 that I'd recommend, except for maybe you can roll your own. So with a Mac Mini, if you're willing to put a bunch of FFmpeg on and everything else, a Mac Mini will absolutely do 4K 60, with no even 120. The new M4 Mac Mini, and it'll be running at like 30%. But it's a custom thing that you're gonna build. I haven't seen anybody build an encoder out of it. They should. But then over $3,000, you have the Prism. We're using the Videon encoder, which we're pretty happy with, the 4K 60, and that's but I think that's about $5,000. That's the max edge, and then after that, you start getting into things like Elemental appliances, which get to be a bit more expensive. But then you have all the tools that you would need to make that work.
Hey, if you value what we do here, there are a few ways you can help. You can like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. There's a lot of content up there, and it's very interesting. You can volunteer at officehours.global/volunteer and become part of the team that makes everything possible here. Great group of people, and boy, we try to stay as close to the leading edge of what streaming is all about and are discussing that every single day. So that means you'll probably learn a ton if you decide to volunteer somewhere in our system. And if you'd like to, you can donate. Just simply make a donation to officehours.global/donate. We are a 501c3, so we follow all the rules for that. All that said, thank you for your support of the show by your presence every day. We had a couple more things. People raised late hands here on our last question. We have a bit of time. So, Guy, did you have something you wanted to follow up with?
Yeah. Also, if you are getting up to that $10,000 range, take a look at the Matrox Edge series, as well as the High Vision SRT lineup. They are the Makito X4s. Those are hitting way up there, though, in the $10,000 range. So depends on what your budget is and how much those cats want to be seen in Ultra 4K. HDR, 60p.
It's hard. You need this much resolution. Anyway, Ronnie Hofsoy.
Yeah, Guy just took my thunder, so I'll just go the other way, going to the really low-end solutions. Don't forget that you also can use software. A Mac Mini M2, 3, or even 4 is kind of cheap solution for this, and then you can add on something like Mimo Live or OBS or something, and have a kind of a very budget-friendly solutions that you can also do a lot of other stuff on as well. So that's, good idea.
Absolutely. Guy was teasing me about cats, but I had a gig once where I had to shoot cats going through a grooming process. The subtitle of that video was "There Will Be Blood." It is, and fur is tough. Fur is tough to shoot, particularly black fur. Never underestimate the challenge. Next question.
Here's one from Kenny Hampton in Greenville, Illinois. With the death of Pope Francis and many upcoming televised events, how does the Vatican handle media production? Is it self-contained, or does it rely on external broadcasters?
Yeah, this is going to be a huge deal globally, so we'll have a lot to look at in terms of various coverage from literally all over the planet. Nigel, start us out.
I was hoping you were going to come to me last because I don't know the answer to the question, but I did just watch the movie Conclave, which, if you haven't seen, is a timely film, if a little controversial ending. If it's a bit serious for you, the other approach is Angels and Demons. But if you believe that at least the fictional versions of it, they control everything.
Great study in cinematography, too. Those scenes where everything is dark except for a pool of beautifully costumed characters. Wow, the cinematography in that was pretty stunning. Jason Bache.
Yeah, Conclave was beautiful. It wouldn't be an Office Hours episode if I couldn't say it just depends. There is no doubt in my mind that there are a dedicated group of Jesuit priests who, run all sorts of things for the Vatican. And, broadcasting is very much a team sport. There's also, I'm sure that they hire things out. So I'm sure it just depends.
Alex.
Yeah, it's a bit of both. So they have their own team. They've got a podcasting and social team. They also have their own broadcast teams and tech teams that work out of the Vatican. So they've got some PTZs in the back. They don't do a lot of heavy camera work in the Synod, at least. This is what it looks like. This was my view of this. So here you can see up here is where the press gets kind of put up into the top here, and they have some cameras up here like this. And then in our case, we were a little selfish, and so we were putting our camera. This is where His Holiness would sit, and so we were putting our camera kind of up front because it was our show at the time. So there is stuff that's built in. You can add stuff if you have if you get the right clearance to do that. So that's kind of where. But a lot of times the press gets kind of put in that back area there. Where they have kind of long lenses. It's kind of cool. The chairs, all the chairs in there have translation. So every chair has in the arm. You can open it up and you pull it up and you can. There's I think it's Spanish, English, and Italian. So you can choose, and they've got their own translators, which is really useful because they really understand what the Pope means, and we learned the hard way not to bring other translators into the stream because it's just understanding the what he means by what he meant when he was doing those things. So, but yeah, they definitely have their own capacity to do a lot of these things, but they also allow obviously the press into the Vatican. It's a little bit of a process to get in. As you would expect, you're going into essentially another country. So you there's a check-in through the Swiss Guard, which is funny. It's funny to have people dressed like that going through your gear, but you get used to it. And but it's cool. And Father Ballasar he's the one that we should probably try to bring on. I think he'll be pretty busy for the next couple of weeks, but but then after that, maybe we'll bring him on and have him talk about it.
That'd be awesome. Awesome. Next question.
Next up is Roscoe Jones in Madison, Indiana. What are your thoughts on Blackmagic Design's new sensor that uses white pixels rather than calculating white levels from the green pixels? With a link.
Alex, do you have an opinion on this?
It has the potential to provide a lot more resolution without sensor cropping. And so it's a really interesting thing that they're doing there. It's really fascinating that they've gotten to the level where they're designing their own chips because chip fab is not a minor problem. So I think that's so they are. I think that it's going to be interesting to see. It's going to be hard. It's very, very hard what they're doing. And they have developed some new ideas related to this. it'll be interesting to see if other manufacturers can keep up with the resolution jumps that they can get out of this. So you're seeing the 65 mil, 17K. You'll see more of those. That's a pretty hard thing for other camera companies to do. So it'll be interesting to see if they get to the much larger sensor. I don't think they have to go much further than this, but they may double it in the next couple of years.
Boy, not ever having to white balance a camera would be a great thing if it absolutely knows what the default is. You don't think it's going to go to there?
That will never happen.
It's more about resolution. Yeah.
Okay. Well, you got to be able to do at least what happened when you push the old white balance button with a white card. And we'll see. Next question.
Tommy Chance in St. Paul, Minnesota, USA is asking, I just picked up an older Rednet PCIeR 64 by 64 card, and it looks like it's not going to work with Apple Silicon. What would serve me well on a build, or what laptop with this Sonnet? With a link.
So Jason Bache is going to dive into this for you. Jason?
Yeah, first, just a little bit of, I'm so sorry, Tommy, because, I bet you picked that up for a song and you thought it would work, but it won't. So, no, it is not compatible. What you need is the Rednet PCIe NX, not the PCIeR. And as far as a laptop that'll do it, any Intel Mac will do it, or just, get a Lenovo ThinkPad, strip Windows, and reload it from scratch, and I'm sure you'll have a pretty useful machine.
Next question.
This one's from me, Cindy Drozda in Erie, Colorado. What do the panelists use for uninterrupted power supply backup systems for your setups?
Alex Lindsay.
I have APS, the APS UPS. They're the 1500s. I think the 1500 KVAs, and these are. I use multiple versions of those. They're relatively inexpensive. They work fine, for my office. Obviously we use larger, more network-controlled APCs. So what you want when you get to a rack size is you want something that you can control all the outlets, via the network. You want to be able to have feedback on what's actually happening. You want to get alarm emails when things aren't working. Those are the kind of things at a larger scale. But for my office, they work fine. The reason those are the minimum for me is that I won't buy a UPS that matters if I can't take the battery out. So I got to be able to pull the battery out and put it back in. So all the smaller ones below the 1500 are all kind of just built in into it. And I need to be able to swap the battery. And also, if I ever want to take it somewhere, you have to take the battery out and flip it to be able to do that. And so I have to know that I can do that. So I don't buy anything smaller than those ones. But I don't buy a lot of bigger ones either, because they're just cheap and they're easy. And I've got like 3 or 4 of them in my office, and they're all on different things. And so, like, my router will last for a day. So if I lose power in the house, I still have internet. And then my lights are on a different one, and all my computers on a different one. So they're split up so that I have different things that will turn off over time. The lights obviously first, then the computers, then the router.
And Jason, did you want to know who was it that wanted to get in? I'm sorry, my screen's
Guy.
Thank you. There we go. I'm back now.
Yeah, I have a CyberPower. It looks like this. It's a smart app, sine wave UPS. It's only $21.50 VA. There are some bigger ones that you can get. It just starts to get expensive, and it depends on get one of these things called a kilowatt, or go look up the manufacturer specs and see what they are drawing. But in reality, sometimes you're not running the full. I mean, you want to have enough overhead to where if you hit the max, you still have the ability to run for, let's say, an hour. I don't know how long. So in my case, I need to go to a generator. So an hour gives me plenty of time to go run an extension cord and go plug in my generator. So it just depends on what you're trying to do and how long you want to go for. Because I've got some guys that'll go for days. Like it's crazy. They're just totally overkill with racks of these things. So it just depends on what you're doing and how much you want to spend. But in here, I have a bunch of the same ones Alex has, the UPS 1500 VAs. They're all over the place. Every machine gets one.
Hopefully, we answered every single one of the questions you had. Thank you for participating in Office Hours today. Our thanks go out to everybody we thank every day, because it's incredibly important to thank these people. Without them, this show is impossible. So to our producers, those of you who asked questions, put them in the queue, voted on the questions, and otherwise participated in helping us create a run of show based on your criteria, We thank you very much for your efforts there. To the panelists who come and freely share their knowledge every single day on our show, thank you to the panel. Without them, this doesn't work at all. And to our incredible back-end crew, the legion of people, both that you will see in the credits as they roll at the end here, but also the people who quietly help us get this off the ground every single day. That's a legion of people around the globe. Thank you so much to them. Our stats today for the Dialog traversal: if you were to try to go around and do this every single day, you would have had to travel 68,000 miles on this day. That's 109,000 kilometers, 535 million bananas for scale. All those other opportunities are available for you as we go through all the other shows and things like that, but we will be right back here tomorrow morning. Thank you for taking your time and watching. Bye.
How do you triple the price of a UPS from APC? Say it has to be rack mounted.
Oh, really? That adds.
Oh, no joke. Exactly the same thing, exactly the same stats, exactly the same output. Put rack ears on it, 2x.
Cindy Rayon just reminded me in the chat that I have an EcoFlow, that is my next step. It's sitting right there next to him, charged as well. So depending on how tired I am, if it goes off at what time of night, or because we've had some drunk drivers hit telephone poles nearby and take out the power, and then I'm like, I don't want to deal with this now, so I just plug in the EcoFlow and everything stays up and going for a couple more hours. So EcoFlows are multi-purpose because you could use them. I use it on the road as well, so they're nice to have. So that serves two purposes instead of just the one.
Yeah.
It does happen. That happened to me.